There are certain relationships in a family, such as elderly parents, that we are unable to question, even if they are incorrect.
Mm,
They're badly offended and feel insecure
mm,
when they are questioned.
mm,
The children and spouses get swallowed up in the process.
mm.
Is there a way to deal with this problem?
You see, in the Telugu language, there is a certain proverb. So, when translated, it runs like this, that somebody is eating in a doormat. The doormat is the plate, is the banana leaf on which you're eating. And then all the dishes are served there. Now you start complaining, I'm getting fibers in the mouth. So, what do you mean by that? The whole thing is that. Now, this is just one small patch of life where there is trouble and where there is either you get hurt or somebody else in the family, they get hurt. And because you're emotionally connected to them, you're emotionally dependent on them, and you've developed an ideal that you should not hurt anybody. Such an ideal is there. And if you are able to follow that ideal and fulfill that ideal, then you may be able to maintain your equanimity. But the moment, because that ideal is somehow enshrined in you, it is implanted in you, and you consciously and unconsciously may be living by that ideal. And when there is a violation of that ideal through life circumstances, because the self wants freedom. Freedom is the dearest thing to it, and freedom and happiness. And that happiness is actually in freedom. And when somebody is sealing off that freedom, is not allowing you to have that freedom, is not allowing you to have that happiness, then you obviously get hurt. And so you will inevitably get hurt. And because you're dependent on the other people, and you have an ideal that, no, I should not have done it, I should have pleased them, and so on. But the fact is that you want sovereignty, you want freedom. And because you want freedom, definitely, overtly or covertly, subtly or in a gross way, you will seek that freedom and you will go after the freedom, and you may trample on other people's feet in the process, and it's bound to happen. So one has to begin with knowing oneself in the family. And the so-called family life is not easy because it's all relationship. It's two people, you and a senior citizen, a grandfather or a grandmother. And once Krishnaji told me, the world teacher, he told me, before I was going to be appointed as the principal of one of his schools, he said, it's a very private conversation. He said, be very careful with senior citizens because after decades of living life in a certain way, they might have kind of got frozen into a certain pattern. So they may not be vulnerable and may not be open to new suggestions and new ways of living and new ways of thinking. And if you expect them to change and learn, you may be disappointed. That's what Krishnaji told me. And yes, what he said is true. Not that all senior citizens are made in that mold. There are a lot of people who cross 60, 65, who have got young, fiery minds. One of my physics teachers at IIT Madras, he told me one very important sutra. He said, there are young people with old minds and old people with young minds, which is very true. We know that. So there are definitely exceptions to this. But in perceiving that the elderly people are not really open, and you have to awaken to sorrow within the family and sorrow in the human family at large, which is a very big thing. And the whole of humanity is in this quandary. And consciously and unconsciously hurting others. One is not aware that one is hurting others. And if one does not want to hurt others, for example, then you may slip into the opposite extreme of sinking into inaction, which is, of course, wrong, because life is all about action. So you cannot even slip into inaction. You have to pay close attention, and you've got to respond to life. And when your action is thwarted, and your action may be spontaneous, by the injunctions given to you by elders, then you're stuck. And then your freedom is curtailed, and you lost your freedom. And from that will come some uneasiness within you, and pain and so on. So it's a very complex thing. We have to understand more the way society is structured. And we have to, if we want to, whether other people are able to get out of this collective mess in which the family is involved, the whole of society is involved. If you want to walk away from it, I think it's possible. But then you will not have companions holding your hands. You will be the lone person, but you alone can set yourself free. And when you thus set yourself free through self-knowing, as the world teacher says, then you will see a lot of people still suffering, and you can't do anything about it. And out of that comes a different kind of awakening to sorrow, which is the sorrow of world teachers like the Buddha, like Krishnamurti and Ramana Maharshi and the Master Jesus and all the great Mahatmas, because they see that they're not able to help humanity, and humanity is in a bad place. So that's the sorrow of the great masters. And one has to go so far. It's just the tip of the iceberg. And once you open it, then it just blows up in the face. It's a very deep problem. And it's not just the sorrow of your senior citizens at home, it's the sorrow of humanity. It's the sorrow of the species.